The morning mist hung thick over the mountain like a gray blanket. Maya pulled her worn shawl tighter around her shoulders as she climbed the familiar rocky path. Her canvas shoes, held together with careful stitching, crunched against the loose stones. She'd walked this trail hundreds of times, but today something felt different. The air was heavy, almost holding its breath. Maya wasn't on the mountain for leisure. While other girls her age might be scrolling through phones or meeting friends at cafes in the city, she was hunting for herbs. Wild ginger for her grandmother's joints. Mint leaves for tea they couldn't afford to buy. Sometimes, if she was lucky, she'd find the rare plants that the village doctor would trade for actual medicine. Her life had become a series of small survivals. Wake up at 4, sew clothes by candlelight because the electricity only worked 3 hours a day. Walk 3 miles up the mountain. Walk 3 miles back. Sew some more, sleep, repeat. She was 22 but felt 40. Her hands were rough and scarred from needle pricks, and her back ached from hunching over her grandmother's old sewing machine. But Maya never complained. At least not out loud. Her parents had died in a bus accident 5 years ago, leaving her with a sick grandmother and debts that seemed to multiply like weeds. The small house they lived in wasn't even theirs anymore. The landlord came every month, hand extended, face impatient. They were already 3 months behind. The fog grew thicker as she climbed higher. Maya knew these paths well enough to walk them blindfolded, but still she moved carefully. One wrong step and you could tumble down the rocky slope. She'd seen it happen to a goat once. She didn't want to end up like that goat. That's when she heard it. A groan, faint, almost swallowed by the mist, but definitely human. Maya froze. Her heart started beating faster. The mountain wasn't safe at dawn. Wild dogs sometimes roamed in packs. Occasionally, dangerous men used these isolated paths for activities they wanted hidden. Her grandmother always warned her to turn back if anything seemed wrong. But the groan came again, weaker this time. It sounded like pain, not threat. Maya bit her lip and moved toward the sound. Her instinct for helping people had always been stronger than her sense of self-preservation. Her grandmother said it would get her in trouble one day. Maybe today was that day. She found him about 20 feet off the main path, crumpled against a large rock like a discarded puppet. At first, Maya thought he might be dead. His face was pale, almost gray. His leg was bent at an angle that made her stomach turn. Blood had soaked through his torn pants, dark and spreading. But what really caught her attention was his clothes. Even torn and muddy, she could tell they were expensive. The fabric of his suit was the kind she'd only seen in magazines left behind at the doctor's office. His shoes, now scuffed and dirty, were leather. Real leather. His watch, partially hidden under his sleeve, caught a ray of early sunlight and gleamed like a small sun. "Sir? Sir, can you hear me?" His eyes fluttered open. They were dark brown, confused, filled with pain. He tried to speak but only managed a whisper. "Fell. Can't phone." Maya looked around. There was no one else. No hiking group. No tour guide. Just this man in his fancy suit bleeding on her mountain, probably going into shock. She should get help. That would be the smart thing. Run back to the village, get the men, bring them back. But looking at his pale face and the way his breathing seemed shallow and rapid, Maya knew he might not have that much time. The nearest village was an hour away on foot. By the time she got back, he might be gone. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her head. "We don't have much, Maya, but we have our humanity. That's something no one can take away." Maya made her decision. She pulled off her shawl and pressed it against the worst of the bleeding on his leg. The man groaned but didn't pull away. His eyes focused on her face, and she saw something in them. Gratitude, maybe. Or just fear. It was hard to tell. "I'm going to help you," Maya said firmly, though her hands were shaking. "But you need to stay awake." "Can you do that?" He managed a small nod. Maya had never been trained in first aid, but growing up poor teaches you things. You learn to handle emergencies because you can't afford ambulances. You learn to clean wounds because doctors are expensive. You learn to be resourceful because there's no other choice. She found straight branches nearby and used strips torn from her own skirt to create a makeshift splint. The man bit his lip to keep from crying out as she worked. His breathing came in short gasps, but he stayed conscious. That was good. That meant he was fighting. "What's your name?" Maya asked, trying to keep him focused. "James," he whispered. "Just James." "Okay, James, I'm Maya. I live at the bottom of this mountain. We're going to get you there, but it won't be easy. You'll need to help me as much as you can." Getting him down the mountain was like trying to move a boulder with bare hands. James was tall and solid. probably weighing twice what Maya did. He tried to help using his good leg to push, but he was weak and dizzy from blood loss. They moved in painful inches, stopping every few minutes so he could catch his breath and so Maya could rest her screaming muscles. Twice, James nearly passed out. Each time Maya talked to him, asking him questions, forcing him to answer. Where was he from? What was he doing on the mountain? Did he have family? His answers were short, sometimes unclear, but they kept him conscious. The sun had fully risen by the time they reached Maya's house. It wasn't much, just 2 rooms made of weathered wood and corrugated metal sheets. The roof leaked when it rained. The walls had gaps that let in wind and sometimes snakes, but it was home. Her grandmother was outside feeding the 3 scrawny chickens that somehow still laid eggs. When she saw Maya half carrying a strange man covered in blood, her eyes went wide. Maya, what have you done? He was hurt on the mountain, Grandma. I couldn't leave him. Her grandmother, despite being nearly 70 with joints that cracked like dry wood, immediately went into action. Together they got James inside and onto Maya's thin mattress. Her grandmother brought water and clean rags while Maya carefully removed the makeshift bandages to examine the wound properly. It was deep, but cleaner than she'd feared. She washed it with boiled water and applied a paste made from herbs she'd collected last week. It wasn't modern medicine, but it would fight infection. That's all they could hope for. James drifted in and out of consciousness as they worked. At one point, his eyes opened fully and locked onto Maya's face. Why? He whispered. You don't know me. Maya paused, her hand still holding a wet cloth. The question seemed strange to her. Did you need to know someone to help them? Did kindness require an introduction first? Because you needed help, she said simply. That's reason enough. Her grandmother brought thin soup made from yesterday's vegetables. There wasn't much, but they made James drink some. He needed strength. He needed to fight whatever infection might come. As night fell, Maya gave James her only bed and made a spot for herself on the floor with old blankets. Her grandmother protested, saying they'd already done enough and shouldn't sacrifice more. They barely had food for themselves. Winter was coming. They had their own problems, but Maya was firm. He'll die if we don't help him, Grandma. I won't have that on my heart, so James stayed, and as Maya lay on the hard floor that night, listening to the stranger's labored breathing in the darkness, she had no idea that this single act of kindness would change everything. She didn't know that the man in her bed was worth more money than her entire village had seen in 100 years. She didn't know that this moment would become the turning point in her life. All she knew was that someone needed help, and she'd given it. For Maya, it really was that simple. In a world that had taken so much from her, she still had one thing left to give, her humanity. And unlike money or property or opportunities, that was something that multiplied when you shared it. Outside, the mountain stood silent under the stars, keeping its secrets. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new questions, and the beginning of a story that neither Maya nor James could have predicted. But tonight, in a tiny house at the foot of the mountain, a poor girl slept on the floor while a billionaire lay in her bed, and kindness was the only currency that mattered. James woke to the smell of herbs and the sound of an old sewing machine. For a moment, he forgot where he was. His penthouse apartment had floor-to-ceiling windows and silence so complete it felt artificial. This place had sunlight streaming through wooden slats and the constant background noise of life. Chickens clucking, a neighbor shouting about vegetables, someone's radio playing scratchy music. His leg throbbed with a dull, persistent ache. When he tried to move, pain shot through him like electricity. He groaned without meaning to. The sewing machine stopped. Footsteps approached, light and quick. Maya appeared, her face creased with concern. You're awake. That's good. How do you feel? Like I fell down a mountain, James said, attempting a weak smile. You did fall down a mountain. Maya pressed her hand against his forehead, checking for fever the way her mother once checked hers. You're still warm, but not as bad as yesterday. I'll make you something to drink. She disappeared, and James took the opportunity to really look at his surroundings. The room was tiny, maybe 10 feet by 10 feet. The walls were made of rough wood planks with visible gaps. He could literally see outside through some of the cracks. A thin curtain divided this space from what he assumed was another room. The furniture consisted of a wobbly table, 2 mismatched chairs, and the bed he was lying on. But despite its poverty, the space was clean. Spotless, actually. The floor had been swept until it shone. The few possessions they had were arranged with care. A small shelf held 3 books, their spines cracked from repeated reading. A clay pot of wildflowers sat on the windowsill, bringing color to the humble space. Maya returned with a cup of something that smelled earthy and bitter. "Drink this. It'll help with the pain and infection." James sipped it and tried not to grimace. It tasted like someone had boiled tree bark and sadness together. "What's in this?" "Better you don't know. Just drink." He noticed her hands as she adjusted his blanket. They were young hands, but rough and scarred. Small cuts covered her fingers, some fresh, some old and healed. Her nails were trimmed short, practical. These were hands that worked hard, hands that knew struggle. "I need to pay you," James said suddenly. "For all this. For the medicine, the bed, the food. Please let me pay you." Maya's expression shifted. Something in her eyes hardened just slightly. "We don't charge people for being decent. You needed help. We helped. That's the end of it. But you've given me your bed. Where did you sleep?" "The floor." "Maya, you can't." "I can and I did. Now drink your medicine and stop arguing with someone who saved your life." There was steel under her gentle tone. James found himself obeying, drinking the bitter liquid until the cup was empty. Maya smiled, satisfied, and took the cup away. Her grandmother entered then, carrying a basket of eggs. She was tiny, barely 5 feet tall, with hair completely white and pulled back in a bun. Her face was a map of wrinkles, but her eyes were sharp and assessing. She looked at James the way a jeweler might examine a suspicious diamond. "So you're awake," she said in a voice that suggested this might or might not be a good thing. "You gave us quite a scare yesterday. Lost a lot of blood. I'm very grateful for your help, ma'am." "Gratitude doesn't fill stomachs or pay rent," the old woman said bluntly, then turned to Maya. "We need to talk about the landlord. He came by yesterday while you were on the mountain." Maya's face fell. "What did he say?" "The usual. Pay or leave. He's giving us 1 more week." James saw Maya's shoulders slump, saw the weight of the world settle back onto them. For a moment, while she'd been caring for him, she'd seemed lighter. Now reality crashed back down. "I'll figure something out, Grandma. I always do. You work yourself to the bone, child. You can't keep—" "I said I'll figure it out." The sharpness in Maya's voice startled everyone, including Maya herself. She looked embarrassed, ashamed of snapping. "I'm sorry, Grandma. I need to get back to work. Mrs. Chen needs her daughter's dress by Friday." She moved to the sewing machine and sat down, her back straight, her foot immediately working the pedal. The rhythmic clack, clack, clack filled the room. Her grandmother sighed and went to prepare food, leaving James alone with his thoughts. Over the next 3 days, James watched Maya's life unfold like a documentary he couldn't turn away from. He watched her wake before dawn, moving quietly so as not to wake her grandmother. He watched her boil water for washing, then use that same water to cook rice because fresh water was precious. He watched her sew for hours without break, squinting in the dim light because electricity was rationed in their village. People came and went, bringing fabric or picking up finished clothes. They paid in vegetables, eggs, sometimes small coins. One woman brought a chicken. An old man gave Maya a bag of rice and apologized that it wasn't more. Nobody seemed to have actual money. They were all surviving on trade and promises. "Why don't you charge more?" James asked one afternoon after a woman had left with a beautifully embroidered blouse, paying with only 3 tomatoes. Maya looked at him, confused by the question. "She doesn't have more. Would you have me take money she needs for her children's food? But you need money too. For rent, for medicine for your grandmother. Everyone needs money. That doesn't mean it exists to take." Maya returned to her sewing. "Besides, Mrs. Liu's husband died last year. She's raising 3 kids alone. I remember when my parents died. People in this village helped us when they didn't have to. Now I help when I can. That's how communities survive." James, who'd built a corporate empire on profit margins and quarterly returns, found himself speechless. He'd never thought about economics this way. In his world, everything had a price, and that price should be as high as the market could bear. Here the market was human need and the price adjusted to compassion. On the second day, James insisted on helping despite his injury. Maya was reluctant, but he was stubborn. She gave him simple tasks: threading needles, organizing buttons, holding fabric while she cut patterns. He was clumsy at first, his hands used to keyboards and signing documents, not delicate craft work. "You're hopeless," Maya said, but she was smiling as she watched him struggle to thread a needle for the 5th time. "I'm better with computers than needles," James admitted. "What do you do?" "For work, I mean," James hesitated. How could he explain that he ran a company with 70,000 employees across 30 countries? That his decisions moved stock markets and made headlines? That people addressed him as sir and stood when he entered rooms? "I work in business. Management mostly." "That sounds boring." James laughed, really laughed, for the first time in months. "It is sometimes. What about you? Did you always want to be a seamstress?" Maya's hand stilled on the fabric. Her eyes took on a distant look, like she was seeing something far away. "No, I wanted to study fashion design. Real design in the city. I had applied to the National Institute, actually. Even got accepted. What happened? Life happened. My parents died. Someone had to take care of Grandma. Someone had to pay the debts. Dreams are luxuries for people who can afford them." There was no self-pity in her voice, just statement of fact. This was her reality. She'd accepted it the way you accept weather or gravity or other unchangeable forces. That evening, James sat outside on the rickety porch while Maya prepared dinner. The sun was setting behind the mountains, painting everything gold and orange. Children played in the dirt road, inventing games with sticks and stones. Old men sat in groups, talking and laughing about nothing important. Women carried water from the communal pump, balancing heavy jugs on their heads. It was poverty. Clear, undeniable poverty, but it was also community. People knew each other's names. They shared what little they had. When Mrs. Liu's youngest child started crying, 3 different people stopped to help before the mother even reached him. In James's world of penthouses and private jets, he could go days without a meaningful human interaction. Here, surrounded by nothing, people had everything that mattered. "Pretty, isn't it?" Maya said, sitting beside him with 2 bowls of thin vegetable soup. "Very. I used to hate this place. Felt trapped by it now." She trailed off, staring at the sunset. "Now I think maybe being poor in a place that cares is better than being anything in a place that doesn't." They ate in comfortable silence, the soup barely enough to satisfy but warm and flavored with care. Maya had given James the bowl with more vegetables. He noticed but didn't comment. On the 3rd day, James's leg felt stronger. He could put weight on it, could walk with only a slight limp. He knew he should call for help, should get back to his company, his responsibilities, his real life. He had a phone in his pocket, cracked but possibly still working if he could charge it, but he didn't call. Not yet. Instead, he spent the day helping Maya deliver finished clothes around the village. They walked slowly, James leaning on a stick Maya had found for him. People stared at the stranger, whispered questions. Maya introduced him simply as a friend who got hurt on the mountain. At every house, James saw the same pattern: hardship met with dignity. A man with one leg working in his garden. A widow raising her sister's children along with her own. A young couple in a house smaller than his walk-in closet, smiling as they showed off their newborn baby. "Does anyone here have enough?" James asked as they walked back. "Enough for what?" "For anything. Food, money, security." Maya thought about this. "No, nobody has enough. But we have each other, and that makes the not enough bearable. In the city, people have everything and share nothing. Here we have nothing and share everything. I'm not sure which is actually poorer." That night, lying in Maya's bed while she slept on the floor again despite his protests, James stared at the ceiling and thought about his life. He thought about his empty apartment, his string of shallow relationships, his employees who feared him more than respected him, his wealth that bought comfort but not contentment. He'd spent 20 years building an empire, and a poor girl who gave away her bed to strangers had more richness in her life than he'd ever known. Something was shifting inside him. Some wall he'd built was cracking. Maya wasn't trying to impress him, wasn't after anything from him. She had no idea who he really was, what he was worth, what he could do for her. Her kindness was pure, uncomplicated by motive. In his world, everyone wanted something. Here, someone had given him everything while wanting nothing. As James drifted off to sleep, he made a decision. Tomorrow, he'd reveal who he was. Tomorrow, help would come. But he'd make sure that Maya's kindness didn't go unrewarded. She'd saved more than his life on that mountain. She'd reminded him of something he'd forgotten in his climb to success: what it meant to be human. The sewing machine sat silent in the darkness. Outside, the mountain stood tall and mysterious, and in a tiny house where 2 people slept, One on a bed and one on the floor, the seeds of change had been planted. They just didn't know it yet. The sound started as a distant hum like angry bees or an approaching storm. Maya was outside, hanging laundry on a rope stretched between two trees when she first heard it. She paused, a wet shirt dripping in her hands, and looked toward the sky. The hum grew louder, deeper, more mechanical. Then she saw it. A black shape cutting through the morning sky, growing larger with each second. A helicopter. An actual helicopter heading straight for their village. Maya had only seen helicopters twice in her life. Once when the president visited the provincial capital 50 miles away, and once when there'd been a terrible landslide and rescue teams came. Helicopters meant important people or terrible emergencies. Neither one belonged in her quiet village. The laundry forgotten, she watched the helicopter descend, its blades kicking up dust and dead leaves in angry circles. Chickens scattered in panic. Dogs barked. Doors opened as neighbors emerged to witness this impossible thing landing in the open field at the village edge. 3 men in black suits stepped out before the blades even stopped spinning. They moved with purpose, with authority, scanning the village like military personnel. One spoke into a radio. Another checked a tablet. The third, older than the others with silver hair and sharp eyes, started walking toward the cluster of houses. Maya's stomach tightened. Something was wrong. Very wrong. Behind her, the door opened. James emerged, moving better now, his limp barely noticeable. He froze when he saw the helicopter. His face went through several emotions: surprise, resignation, something that looked almost like regret. "James?" Maya's voice was small. "What's happening?" Before he could answer, the silver-haired man spotted them and quickened his pace. "Mr. Rothwell, thank God we found you. We've been searching for 3 days. Mr. Rothwell." The name hit Maya like cold water. Not just James, Mr. Rothwell. The way the man said it carried weight, importance. The kind of respect people reserved for officials or wealthy people or Richard. James's voice was different now. Stronger. More commanding. The voice of someone used to being obeyed. "I'm fine. The search can be called off. Sir, with all respect, you disappeared. Your phone was offline. The board has been in chaos. The merger talks with Chen Corporation are stalling without you. And the media." Richard glanced at Maya, seemed to recalculate what he should say in front of her. "We need to get you back immediately." Maya stood frozen, the wet shirt still in her hands, trying to process what was happening. Board merger talks? Media? These weren't words from James's world. These weren't words from the world of someone who'd fallen while hiking. More people emerged from the helicopter. A woman in the expensive suit carrying a briefcase. 2 men who looked like security, their eyes constantly scanning for threats. One carried what looked like a medical kit. The village had gathered now. Dozens of people standing at safe distance, watching this scene like it was a television show playing out in real life. Maya saw Mrs. Liu, Mrs. Chen, Old Man Wang, all staring, all confused. "James?" Maya said again, but this time it came out as barely a whisper. He turned to her, and the look on his face made her heart sink. It was apologetic, sad, the look of someone about to deliver bad news. "Maya, I need to explain. My name is James Rothwell. I'm the CEO of Rothwell Industries. I wasn't just hiking when I fell. I was returning from a business retreat and there was a miscommunication with my driver. My phone broke in the fall, so I couldn't call for help. I'm sorry I wasn't completely honest with you." The words came at Maya like arrows. CEO, Rothwell Industries. Even she, who rarely saw newspapers or television, knew that name. Rothwell Industries owned factories, built skyscrapers, had offices in countries she couldn't name. It was the kind of company that existed in a different universe from hers. "You lied to me," Maya said. The hurt in her voice made James flinch. "I didn't lie. I just didn't tell you everything. And I had my reasons. Maya, in my world, when people know who I am, they treat me differently. They want things. They pretend to be kind because of what I can give them. But you," his voice softened, "you helped me because I needed help. Not because of who I was or what I had. That was real. That was genuine. I didn't want to ruin it." Maya felt her grandmother's hand on her shoulder. The old woman had come outside, standing beside her granddaughter like a protective wall. "So what now?" her grandmother asked, her voice sharp. "You reveal yourself and leave? Was this all some kind of entertainment for you? Playing poor people? No." James looked stricken. "Please, you have to understand. What you did for me, what you showed me, it changed something. I came to this mountain lost in more ways than just physically. You reminded me of things I'd forgotten, important things. Richard stepped forward, uncomfortable with the emotional display. Mr. Rothwell, we really need to go. The board meeting is in 4 hours and we need to get you cleaned up, briefed on everything that's happened. I know, Richard. Just give me a moment. James approached Maya and she fought the urge to step back. This man suddenly seemed like a stranger. The James who'd struggled to thread a needle, who'd laughed at his own clumsiness, who'd sat on her porch eating thin soup without complaint. Was that even real? Or was it all just a rich man playing at poverty, tourist in someone else's hardship? Please let me repay you, James said. For the medical care, the food, your bed. We don't want your money. Maya's voice was ice. We helped you because it was the right thing to do, not because we expected payment. That's what decent people do, Mr. Rothwell. Though I guess in your world everything has a price. The words were harsh, harsher than Maya usually spoke, but they came from a place of deep hurt. She'd opened her home, given her bed, shared their meager food, and the whole time, this man could probably buy her entire village with what he spent on shoes. The thought made her feel small, stupid, used. James pulled something from his pocket, a business card white and pristine despite everything. He held it out to her. This has my direct number. Please, when you're ready to talk, call me. I meant what I said. I want to help. Not as payment, but as a friend who cares about what happens to you. Maya stared at the card but didn't take it. James waited, then gently placed it on the wooden porch railing. The morning breeze immediately caught it, sliding it a few inches. James weighted it down with a small stone. I'm sorry, he said quietly, for not telling you everything. But I'm not sorry for getting to know you. These 3 days were the most real thing that's happened to me in years. He turned and walked toward the helicopter. His limp was barely noticeable now. Richard and the others immediately surrounded him, forming a protective barrier. The woman with the briefcase was already talking rapidly, updating him on business matters. The security personnel scanned the growing crowd of villagers. Maya watched him go. Part of her wanted to run after him to say something to what? Forgive him? Accept his help? Tell him she understood? But her feet felt rooted to the ground, heavy as stones. James stopped just before reaching the helicopter. He turned back, his eyes finding Maya across the distance. For a long moment, they just looked at each other. Then he raised his hand in a small wave. A goodbye. Maya didn't wave back. The helicopter's blades began to spin faster and faster until they became a blur. The noise was deafening. Dust and debris flew everywhere, forcing people to cover their faces and turn away. Maya stood still, watching as the machine lifted off the ground, wobbling slightly before stabilizing and rising higher. Within minutes, it was gone. Just a black dot in the sky, then nothing. The silence that followed felt unnatural, heavy. The villagers slowly dispersed, heading back to their homes, buzzing with gossip and speculation. By afternoon, the story would grow into legend. Maya Chen had hosted a billionaire and didn't even know it. Maya's grandmother squeezed her shoulder. Come inside, child. Let's have some tea. I don't want tea, Grandma. I want to understand why I feel so angry and so sad at the same time. Because you were kind and open and he wasn't honest, but also because you know that life just got more complicated. They went inside. The house felt different now, like the 3 days with James had changed its shape somehow. Maya looked at the bed he'd slept in, the table where he'd sat, the corner where he'd clumsily tried to help with sewing. Evidence of him was everywhere, but he was gone. The business card sat on the railing outside, held down by the stone. Maya left it there. Days passed. Then a week. Life returned to its normal rhythm, but nothing felt quite normal anymore. The landlord came for rent, and Maya gave him what little she'd managed to save, begging for more time for the rest. He wasn't kind about it. 2 more weeks, he said. Then you're out. Mrs. Chen picked up her daughter's dress and paid with a bag of flour. Is it true? She asked, unable to contain her curiosity. That the man you helped was James Rothwell? The James Rothwell. I don't want to talk about it. They say he's worth billions. Billions, and you just let him go? Maya, you could have asked for anything. He would have. I said I don't want to talk about it, but everyone wanted to talk about it. The story spread beyond the village, reaching nearby towns. A journalist even came asking questions, wanting to write an article about the poor girl and the billionaire. Maya refused to speak to him. Her grandmother chased him away with a broom. At night, lying on her thin mattress, Maya thought about James. She was angry at him, yes. Hurt by his deception, definitely. But she also remembered the look in his eyes when he talked about his empty life. The way he'd genuinely struggled to help with simple tasks. The quiet way he'd observed everything, like he was trying to memorize poverty to take back to his wealthy world. He'd been lonely. She'd recognized it because she knew loneliness intimately. They were lonely in different ways. Him surrounded by people who wanted things from him. Her surrounded by people she couldn't help despite wanting to. But loneliness was loneliness whether you felt it in a penthouse or a shack. Her grandmother's health worsened. The herbs weren't working anymore. She needed real medicine, the kind with long chemical names and high prices. Maya counted her coins every night, trying to make the math work, failing every time. One evening, 2 weeks after James left, Maya found herself on the porch, staring at the business card. It had survived rain and wind, still pinned under its stone. The edges were worn, but the phone number was still legible. She picked it up, turned it over in her hands. The cardstock was thick, expensive, embossed lettering, the kind of card that announced importance before you even read the words. "Are you going to call him?" her grandmother asked from the doorway. "I don't know. Would it make me a hypocrite? I told him I didn't want his money. You told him you didn't want payment. But help, that's different. There's no shame in accepting help when you need it, Maya. Pride is expensive and we can't afford it right now." Maya looked at the card for a long time. Then she put it in her pocket. That night she dreamed of helicopters and mountains and a man who'd been both honest and dishonest, both stranger and friend. She woke before dawn, as always, to the sound of roosters and the distant bark of dogs. Her grandmother was coughing in the next room, a deep rattling cough that spoke of things getting worse. Maya pulled the business card from her pocket, looked at the number, thought about pride and necessity, about kindness given and help needed. She'd always believed that you helped people because it was right, not because of what you'd get back. But maybe sometimes letting people help you back was its own kind of kindness. Maybe refusing James's help was actually denying him something he needed. The chance to be decent, to give back, to balance the scales of human connection. Or maybe she was just desperate and trying to justify it. The sun rose over the mountain, painting everything gold. Maya made her decision. She would call. Not today, maybe not tomorrow, but soon. When pride and necessity finally finished their battle, and necessity won like it always did, the business card went back in her pocket. The sewing machine called her to work. Life went on as it always did, one difficult day at a time. But something had changed. A door had opened, just a crack, and Maya wasn't sure if she was brave enough to walk through it. 2 months passed like slow torture. Maya's grandmother ended up in the village clinic twice, each visit costing money they didn't have. The landlord made good on his threat and started eviction proceedings. Maya sewed until her fingers bled, taking every job she could find, but it was like trying to fill an ocean with a teaspoon. The business card stayed in her pocket, but she never called. Pride? Stubbornness? Fear? Maybe all three. Every time she pulled out the card to dial, something stopped her. She imagined James in his office, surrounded by important people doing important things. Would he even remember her? Maybe those 3 days had been nothing to him, just an unusual story to tell at dinner parties. Once I got lost and stayed with these poor people. Quite the experience. The thought made her sick. It was a Thursday morning when everything changed. Maya was at the market trading a sewn jacket for vegetables when she heard the sound. Not a helicopter this time. Cars. Expensive ones by the sound of their engines, smooth and powerful. Nothing like the sputtering trucks and motorcycles the villagers drove. A convoy of 5 black vehicles rolled into the village like a strange parade. People stopped what they were doing. Children ran alongside the cars, excited by anything different. The vehicles moved slowly, carefully navigating the narrow dirt road until they stopped in the center of the village. Maya's heart started pounding. She knew. Somehow she just knew. The door of the middle car opened and James stepped out. He looked different. Still wore an expensive suit, but his hair was slightly messy and his eyes had dark circles under them like he hadn't been sleeping well. He scanned the gathering crowd, searching. When his eyes found Maya, he smiled. Not a polite business smile. A genuine, relieved smile. "Hello, Maya." She couldn't speak, couldn't move. just stood there holding her basket of vegetables, aware that everyone in the village was watching this scene unfold. Other people emerged from the cars. Richard, the silver-haired man from before, several others in suits carrying briefcases and folders, but also architects with rolled blueprints, engineers with measuring equipment, people who looked like they built things, changed things, made impossible things happen. James walked toward her and the crowd parted like water. I know I should have called first, given you warning, but I was afraid you wouldn't answer and this couldn't wait any longer. I've been trying to respect your space, trying to let you come to me when you were ready. But then Richard showed me the reports and I realized I'd waited too long already. Reports? Maya's voice came out scratchy, uncertain. About this village. About the water situation. The road conditions, the lack of medical facilities. About your grandmother's hospitalizations. About your rent situation. James's expression was pained. Maya, why didn't you call me? I could have helped. The words came out sharper than Maya intended. I didn't want your charity. It's not charity. You saved my life. You already said thank you. That should be enough. They stood there, two stubborn people locked in a battle of pride and obligation, while the entire village watched like it was the most entertaining thing that had happened in years. James took a deep breath. You're right. Thank you isn't enough. Neither is money. So I'm not offering either one. I'm offering something else. An opportunity. A partnership, if you will. He gestured to the people behind him. These are architects, engineers, business consultants, and medical professionals. I've brought them here to propose something to this village. But first I need to propose something to you specifically. He pulled out a folder from one of his assistants and handed it to Maya. She opened it with trembling hands. Inside was paperwork, official-looking documents with seals and signatures. Her eyes scanned the words, but they seemed impossible to process. A full scholarship to the National Fashion Institute, James said quietly. 4 years, all expenses paid, including housing, materials, and a living stipend. The same school you were accepted to 5 years ago. They were very interested when I explained your situation and showed them samples of your work. Yes, I had Richard collect some pieces. I hope that's okay. Maya's vision blurred. Tears were forming, but she blinked them back angrily. I can't accept this. My grandmother needs me. The house, the debts, which brings me to the second part. James gestured and an architect stepped forward with blueprints. I'm proposing we renovate your home. New roof, proper walls, plumbing, electricity, modern appliances. Your grandmother will have a comfortable, warm place to live. We'll also arrange for regular medical care from a qualified doctor who will visit weekly, more often if needed. James, this is too much. I'm not finished. His voice was gentle but firm. I've also arranged for your grandmother to have a caretaker, someone from the village, someone she already knows and trusts. Mrs. Liu has agreed, actually. She needs the income and your grandmother likes her. So you don't have to worry about leaving her alone. Maya's head was spinning. This was too much information. Too many impossible things happening at once. Why? She whispered. Why are you doing all this? James stepped closer. Close enough that their conversation became private despite the audience. Because in 3 days you taught me more about humanity than I'd learned in 40 years of living. Because you gave everything when you had nothing. Because talent like yours deserves a chance and circumstances shouldn't steal that chance. And because, he paused, his voice dropping even lower. Because I haven't been able to stop thinking about you. About this place. About what really matters in life. Before Maya could respond, James turned to address the entire village. His voice carried confident and clear. I have a proposal for all of you. I've researched your village extensively. You have skilled hands, strong community ties, and limited economic opportunities. I'm proposing we build a textile workshop here. A real factory with modern equipment, ethical wages, and connections to international markets. The crowd murmured, confused and excited and skeptical all at once. James continued. This factory will employ 50 people initially, more as it grows. We'll provide training, fair wages, and proper working conditions. The designs will be created here, inspired by your local traditions and craftsmanship. Maya, once she finishes her education, will serve as head designer, but the work, the heart of this operation, will be yours. Your skills, your heritage, your community. Old man Wang stepped forward, his weathered face suspicious. Why would you do this? Rich people don't build factories in forgotten villages. What's in it for you? A good question, and you deserve an honest answer. James looked around at all the faces watching him. Rothwell Industries has been criticized for years about our labor practices in developing regions. We pay legally, but not always ethically. We profit from poverty without addressing it. This project is my attempt to do better, to prove that business can be successful while also being decent. If it works here, we'll replicate it elsewhere. You'll be a model, a proof of concept. So we're your experiment? Mrs. Chen called out, her voice sharp. No, you're my teachers. I'm hoping to learn from you as much as help you. The factory will be structured as a cooperative. You'll have ownership stakes, voices in decisions, profit sharing. This is your community. I'm just providing the capital and connections to make it sustainable. The village elder, a man so old no one knew his exact age, pushed through the crowd. He studied James with eyes that had seen a century of promises made and broken. And the water problem, the road? The school that's falling apart? James nodded to the engineers. We'll drill a proper well, repair and pave the main road, and renovate the school. These aren't favors tied to the factory. They're things that should have been done already. Consider them separate projects. Nothing's free, the elder said. Everything comes with strings. You're right. There are conditions. First, I need your cooperation and participation. This only works if the community is invested. Second, I need transparency. My team will be around monitoring, ensuring this is actually helping and not just making me feel good. Third, I need time. Building something real takes years, not months. You'll have to be patient with the process. The elder was quiet for a long moment. Then he turned to Maya. What do you think, girl? You're the one who helped him. You're the one he's putting at the center of this. Do you trust him? Everyone turned to look at Maya. The weight of the entire village's future suddenly rested on her shoulders. She looked at James, really looked at him, tried to see past the expensive suit and the promises to the man underneath. Was this real? Was he genuine? Or would he build them up just to let them down when something more interesting came along? But then she remembered him sitting on her porch eating thin soup without complaint. Remembered him struggling to thread a needle, laughing at his own incompetence. Remembered the loneliness in his eyes when he talked about his life. That hadn't been fake. That had been real. I think, Maya said slowly, that he's either completely sincere or the best liar I've ever met, and I've decided to believe he's sincere. But, she turned to James, if you do this, you have to commit. You can't build people's hopes and then walk away when it gets boring or difficult. These are real lives, real families. We're not a project you can abandon. I know, and I won't. You have my word. The word of a rich man isn't worth much here. Then I'll give you something more. James pulled out more documents, legal contracts, binding agreements, money placed in escrow accounts that release on completion of milestones. I'm not asking you to trust me blindly. I'm giving you leverage, protection, enforceable commitments. The village elder took the documents, though Maya doubted he could read the legal language. He'd need someone from town to review them. We'll need time to consider this, to discuss as a community, of course. Take all the time you need. We'll stay at a hotel in the nearest town. Here's my direct number. James handed out cards to several village leaders. Call me when you've decided. Then he turned back to Maya. And you? Will you consider the scholarship? Maya looked at the folder still in her hands. At the opportunity written in official letterhead and legal promises. She thought about her grandmother, about the house, about the debts. She thought about the dreams she'd buried 5 years ago, telling herself they were dead. But dreams don't die easily. They just go dormant, waiting for the right conditions to bloom again. I'll consider it, she said, but I need to talk to my grandmother first. This affects her as much as me. Fair enough. James smiled, and again it was that genuine smile, the one that made him look younger, less burdened. Thank you, Maya, for considering it, for helping me, for being exactly who you are. The convoy left as dramatically as it arrived. As the dust settled and the sound of engines faded, the village erupted into chaos. Everyone talking at once, arguing and wondering and planning and doubting. Some people were excited, others suspicious. A few were already calculating what they might gain. Maya walked home in a daze. Her grandmother was sitting outside, having watched the whole thing from their porch. Well, the old woman said, that was quite a show. Grandma, I don't know what to do, don't you? Seems pretty clear to me. That boy is offering you everything you've ever wanted. But what about you? I can't just leave you. Her grandmother reached out and took Maya's hand, her grip surprisingly strong. "Child, I'm old. My life is mostly behind me. Yours is ahead of you. If you stay here because of me, I'll die knowing I stole your future. If you go, I'll die proud knowing I raised someone brave enough to grab opportunity when it came. Don't talk about dying. Everyone dies, Maya. The question is what we do with the living. I've had my time. Now it's yours. Take it. Take it with both hands and don't let go." That evening, the village held an emergency meeting in the community hall. Everyone crammed into the small space, voices raised, emotions high. Some people argued for accepting James's offer. Others warned of hidden traps. A few suggested negotiating for more. Maya sat quietly in the corner listening. These were good people, her neighbors and friends. They'd helped her when her parents died. They'd shared what little they had during hard times. Whatever decision was made, it would be made together. Finally, the elder called for silence. "We'll vote, but first I want to say something. We've been forgotten by everyone, the government, the wealthy, the world. Suddenly someone remembers us, someone offers help. Maybe it's too good to be true. Maybe it's not. But I'm tired of being forgotten. I say we take the chance." The vote was nearly unanimous. The village would accept James's offer, with conditions and protections in place. Someone would review the contracts. Everything would be verified. But yes, they would try. Maya walked home under stars so bright they looked fake, like someone had scattered diamonds across black velvet. Her grandmother was already asleep, snoring softly in the next room. Maya pulled out the scholarship papers and read them again by candlelight. 4 years. Education, opportunity, a chance to become who she'd always dreamed of being. She thought about being afraid, about staying safe in the familiar, about protecting herself from disappointment. Then she thought about James's words. Talent like yours deserves a chance. Maybe he was right. Maybe she did deserve a chance. Maya found a pen and, with shaking hands, signed her name on the acceptance papers. Tomorrow everything would change. Tomorrow the future would begin. But tonight she was still Maya Chen, seamstress, caretaker, daughter of the mountain village. Tonight she let herself be scared and excited and hopeful all at once. Outside, the mountain stood silent, keeping its secrets. But Maya was done with secrets, done with small dreams and smaller expectations. She was ready for something bigger, something brighter, something that terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. She was ready for her life to begin. The morning Maya left for the city, the entire village gathered to see her off. It was barely dawn, the sky painted in shades of pink and orange, and she stood surrounded by people who'd watched her grow up, watched her struggle, watched her survive. Mrs. Liu pressed a bundle of homemade cookies into her hands. For when you get homesick, Old Man Wang gave her a carved wooden pendant, for luck. Even the landlord who'd been threatening eviction showed up, looking slightly ashamed. Offering an awkward apology she accepted with grace. Her grandmother stood strong, refusing to cry, though her eyes were wet. "You make us proud, you hear? Not by being successful, but by staying yourself. Don't let that fancy school change who you are." Maya hugged her tight. "I won't, Grandma. I promise." The card James had sent was nice, but not ostentatious. The driver was kind, helping with her single bag of belongings. As they pulled away, Maya watched her village shrink in the rearview mirror until it was just a cluster of small buildings at the mountain's foot. Then nothing at all. The National Fashion Institute was overwhelming. Buildings made of glass and steel. Students in trendy clothes speaking confidently about designers Maya had never heard of. Studios filled with equipment she didn't know how to use. For the first few weeks she felt like a fraud, like someone would discover she didn't belong and send her back.